Hi, I'm Paul and this is my channel Lageting. I teach architecture at the university and part of my job is to introduce Photoshop to the students. I've invited them to send me their files and offered to give them a digital crit. They've been kind enough to let me put this on YouTube to share it with other students and anyone that's interested. Let's get to work. Okay, let's go with the third session of our Photoshop sessions. We are looking at Elise's file today, so let's get to work. Think. Okay, let's talk about this. Elisa has used embedded files. She's pulled files into Photoshop in a way that makes smart objects. That's good sometimes, but it also makes it necessary to keep track of the links. I figured this out before starting. I asked Elisa to send me the files as a separate folder, so they should be here. I've downloaded the folder. Thing is, you could either work with the file directly as an image inside of Photoshop, and then all the pixels that are in the layer are everything you get. Or you could use embedded links or a smart object, and then you will see there's a small icon that appears on the thumbnail for the layer. We just have to relink these files. As long as you keep track of your files, it shouldn't be a problem. And this one is called 87. It's this one. And then you see all of them are found automatically by Photoshop. Let's see what we have here. Okay, let's go. What I see here is a quite nice illustrative piece. It has quite a wide color palette. It has some dark blues, light blues, some saturated orange and red, a really clear yellow surface here, some purples underneath, a couple of scale figures that are a bit Art Nouveau, I guess, in the style, some flowers and vegetations, and it's a bit hard to tell if the idea is that this is just to convey some kind of atmosphere or if it's supposed to look like a location by the riverside. I'm leaning towards the last definition or interpretation, and then I think we have to look into the perspective a bit because it's a bit off. I also can see that the scale seems a bit all over the place. I really like the color palette of the background image, and we might make use of that. I also like the color palette of the architecture itself, but I think they're a bit disconnected, so I want to try to combine this color palette with this color palette. We might be able to do that. I also feel that the lighting is a bit all over the place. It seems like the figures are quite flat. Elisa has done some good work with the lighting here, underneath here. So the architecture itself seems on the way to get a good lighting setup. And we also have some hints of the lights in the scenery that's in the background. So we might be able to take some of that and transfer it to the work. I also feel that this cute little duck is a bit also cut in like a separate item. It doesn't seem like it's in the scene. Although I really enjoy that it looks like the duck is sort of active, present in the situation. It's not just a duck standing there, it's actually a duck looking for fish, or do ducks eat fish? I don't know. Probably looks for insects and duckweed. Let's look into the layer structure a bit. We can even pull this one out to have a bit better overview. I might actually dock this here because I need to look into the layers. And as you see, when the image is a standing portrait format, I have more space on the side to be able to keep track of the layers. And as you know, when you're a beginner of Photoshop, ordering your layers, it becomes a bit crazy. It's very typical, and I wouldn't worry too much about it. We're gonna search quite a lot, so I really think you should start using names for your layers. When you start to get to know Photoshop a bit better, you don't really need to name all your layers because you can organize them in a more logical way, and you work faster, so you also don't use that much time, so you don't forget the layers. So we'll see. We're gonna tidy up a bit. I also want to just test how the value structure is. So I'm gonna add a black and white filter. This is, as we talked, it's just a pseudo value check. It doesn't really tell me that much about the values because I can easily manipulate the black and white filter. So if you see up here, if I only darken the reds, the value structure, I can totally change the value structure from very dark in the reds and very light in the reds. And of course, if you have automatic, it will try to mimic a typical black and white image that looks good for the eye. And it depends a bit on the saturation and value of the underlying layers. But you know, it's a useful tool, but don't trust it too much. For instance, you can see the yellow part is, it dies, the light of it dies. So if I pump up I would say it feels a bit more like this. So to make sure you're a bit aware of that. It's a bit darker than the person sitting there. It's a good test anyway. Good to know. I think the value structure isn't too bad. The people are very flat, so we're going to work on that. We also feel that we could push the values a bit, both up and down. Let's see about these layers. That's fun. I think I don't even know. It's a tiny color shift of sorts. Can't even see what it does. Okay, so those are the legs. What I would suggest is that you figure out where the main person is. Yeah, this one. You can work like this. It's not a bad idea to have separate layers so you can sort of move around stuff and shift things. But when you've fixed everything in position, I would really recommend that you go right click on the layer and you merge down. And just learn this shortcut, Command E, Control E for PCs. What that does is it merges those two layers. So it takes the top layer and merges it down. Make note that it also flattens your effects and stuff. So if you want to preserve the effects, just be a bit aware of that. Okay, so this is lady in the back. Lady in back. And this is a flower. This is also a flower. So let's combine these two flowers. Yes. I think I'm going to work from the back to the front because it seems like the opacity modes and these transparencies that Elisa has put on them gets a bit confused when it's merged down to the next layer. So let's see what happens if we merge down like this. So we can show all the flowers and then merge visible. Okay, let's start from the bottom. There's so many layers here that white background, cross, nothing in this layer. I check if there's anything in the layer by hovering over the icon, holding Command, and you can see on the cursor there's a small marquee square that shows up, and you press on that and it marks everything in the layer. If there's nothing in the layer, you will not see any marching ants on screen, and then you can be safe to delete the layer. Of course, there is the architecture. I think this is the horizon. Good work, Elisa. You have been paying attention to my ramblings about horizon. Or you knew it from before. I don't know. Okay, so we have... I'm not sure why we have two cross. Cross is block in Norwegian, and it's probably a code for the architecture. Not sure why there are two. We can keep this one. So we have a foreground image, sort of a backgroundy image. One thing you could notice that it seems like this person is standing a bit above the photographer. And what I mean by that is that it seems like he's uphill a bit. So I would say that my eyes would be maybe somewhere here, probably near this waterfall. It doesn't need to be there, but it could be, which means that the horizon is quite a bit lower. So when I then see this horizon up here, this might sort of mess up our perspective in the long run. So we'll see. I can keep this blue line as a guide, then we'll see if that becomes a problem. A small seagull. Distant view. And this is near view. This has tried to limit the intensity of that square, but it seemed that it wasn't on. I'm not sure if this curves layer actually does anything. Yeah, it seems to be flat up here. I'm gonna delete it. There's a duck. I think this is the original. One tip is that if you have photos you would like to sort of keep, you can keep them on, of course, but put them behind your bottom background. So anything you don't really use, I would put there. Let's see, ducking duck sits there. We can keep the hue saturation. I'm not sure if that, it didn't look like it was on. Nothing in layer 3, delete it. This is the red wall. I'm not sure this is anything. I'm gonna dare to delete that one too. A small adjustment of the darkness of the red wall. Some tapestry on the wall, cool. Again, seems to be nothing. I'm gonna delete that one. Not sure what this does. It seems to be the darkness of the top. But as far as I can tell, it's the same as here. So it seems like Elisa has put some kind of texture on top of the blue. And the texture seems to be blue. Yeah, you can see it in the icon here. And she's clipped it to the shape of the wall. It's not a horrible way to work, but it seems to be a bit convoluted, a bit overcomplicated. I think I would... Yeah, okay. She's linked the image of a texture in here. Okay. We can keep it as a clipped layer. Call this blue wall, even though we can clearly see it. Blue texture. Again, I think this is one of the ladies that's been used as a cutout. Generally, I try to avoid having layers with content that I don't really want to have. Of course, if you're not sure if you want, let's say, if you're not sure you want to have a yellow or lighter yellow floor here, then you should keep it. Call it lighter yellow floor. If you see over time that you don't use it, either move it out of the way or delete it. I want to have as much as possible that's actually in use in the file. So this is the lady front, and this is lady front flowers. There's a color balance adjustment, but it seems to be not in use. I'm gonna delete it. More flowers. Lady front flowers 2. Lady. Lady. There you go. Lady in back. Something. Not sure what this actually is. There are 4 dots here. I'm gonna delete this. It's not enough to justify a full layer. It might have been smart at some point, but I don't think we need it. It seems that we've managed to organize this a bit better. One thing I would do is to collect all the layers that are connected to this, to the same thing. So all of these things are connected to this layer. So I want to take this duck and just move it on top of this. Or under, but then under everything. Probably doesn't really matter that much. Okay, what should we fix first? I want to establish a better perspective. And I want to do it quite soon, because that's going to haunt us for a long time if we don't fix it now. I create a new layer on top. Call it perspective guides. You have these intelligent features in Photoshop with you can put this perspective in and stuff. I think it's good when you're learning about perspective to do it manually, because first of all, it helps you to internalize what is going on in the perspective and not get spoiled with these digital systems. Of course, if you're in a hurry and you want to deliver something to a project or a client or whatever, sure, use all tools that are available. When you learning the hard way is often learning the good way. Maybe. I don't know if that's smart or not. So I'm gonna follow this line and I try to aim through this point I'm eyeballing this like that. Let's see, so far this one, we go up here. Yeah, close enough. It seems like we have to extend them. Yeah, but they all seems to go over here. The architecture is over here. It's good to know. I'm gonna extend this one. Whoops. What I did there is sure. If you select the A tool, this tool, just press A, then you could press either the node on one side and move the line, sure, or you could press the other, or you could press the center of the line and then you would move the line. Okay, so let's stretch this one. I don't want to see that anymore. This one. Okay. Yeah, they converge here. So then for the architecture, the perspective is there and the vanishing point is there. So it seems that the horizon and the architecture is in the right place. So Elisa has hit the mark there really well. That's cool. I think the problem is this water. Because if you can imagine that this water is a flat surface, and this might just be me, I feel that this water is a bit more around here. That might be wrong, but that's how I feel it. It's not a big deal, but it feels sort of or almost like, you see, it seems like this corner is sort of dipping into the water. So let's try to fix that. It might also be because this is a river and it sort of flows downhill. And maybe the painter here didn't really, I don't know. It seems to be in perspective, but for me it seems like this part is moving upwards, sort of. Whoop. Yeah. Near view, we can make a copy just to keep it there and here. Yeah, it seems to be that this is probably correct, which means I can delete that one. Okay. I think part of the problem is that this water is flatter. It's, how would you say? This one you see from the top down. This floor you see sort of from the top, a bit like this. You stand over it, so you see this part and this part. And it's also, it seems to be quite a big structure, sort of. But this water, I feel you see it more from the bottom, and it's a bit flatter. I don't know if that makes sense for you, but let me try to show it. Because for me, it seems like you have one floor that you can see a bit like this. You see it like you're standing more or less above it, looking down on it. And the floor underneath lies a bit more like this. And there's nothing technically wrong with that, but this one looks then like if you drop a ball here, it would bounce down and roll off the edge and land here. And that's not what Elisa is trying to do. As far as I know, this floor is supposed to be flat, because this is the surface that this lady sits on. It all connects with the horizon line in the background. And then if that perspective works, this should be flat. And the water, of course, water is usually level. So what we want to do is make sure that this floor, the floor of the water, should be more tilted towards us. And if we look at these two images, the solution to this would be to take this line, these lines, and push this one down and push this one up, and then still keep this. I think I might be able to do that by going into the near view, Command T to transform. But I think warp might be the best because then we could still control the positions of things. So I want to push this one up, I want to pull this one down. I'm stretching the center of it, so to speak. It might be good actually to break this line because it's a bit boring here. So I think I like this one. Let's see if this works. It helps. You see what I did? I stretched the center. So I made a bigger distance between this part and this part. I stretched this one out and this one out. So we have tried to fix the water a bit. Not sure if it worked. We'll get back to the water. I also want to get it a bit more placed in the location. Next, I feel that the whole scene is a bit cramped. I would like to give it some air. It seems to be a bit sort of tight. I would go maybe 450 times 450 just to give myself a bit space. To fill in this just as a start, I could try to give Adobe a chance. Fill, content aware. Nope, it didn't sample all the layers. So let's see. Sample all layers. Yeah, looks okay. I can fix that later. So that was a situation where the standard content aware fill that's under fill you have sort of the default easy to use content aware. Just press fill, enter, and then it usually works out. If it doesn't work, like it didn't do now, you could go to the content aware fill dialog, you will get the opening, and then you could have a bit more complex settings here. You will even see how they think it should be done. I think I'm gonna avoid sample all layers. Yeah, I like this one better because I want to get hold of the background. Actually, this one this one looks better. Okay, I think the rest here can just stay like this. I could actually, I want a bit more on top of the head. Let's see, 450. Press this to push it just in the top, and then we go there. Okay, I think that this is a good situation where we could get a bit more out of the references. So I'm going to go to the near view. I'm going to select the background here like this. Copy, go to the front and then paste it. So what I did is that I copied the forest and I'm gonna move these ones further down. Let's move them in the view area. What I'm aiming for is to be able to give this kind of vibey distant forest feel over here, because then they are sort of held in place by this forest. I think that looks good. I also get the opportunity to get a bit more depth. I'm just gonna push it to somewhere I think looks good. Should it even be lower? No, it should actually, yeah, it should be about here. Yeah, that's good. That's good. I'm actually going to merge a lot of this. This one I wanna merge into the distant view. We can organize this better later. This one I want to put into the near view. This one I will call forest and keep as a separate layer for now. I'm gonna make a layer mask. I see that Elisa isn't working with layer mask. She has cut out the forms that she needs. I would recommend to use layer masks. Make sure that the mask is selected in the layer. Paint with black if you want it to be removed. The black is the masking color, and then we can go to a soft brush, zero hardness, just fade this forest out a bit. See that it doesn't really need to be that super precise. It still sort of conveys the feeling of this being a location. For me, it seems like this part is a bit sort of too shallow. The whole shape isn't there. I would prefer actually to have, let's see. Yeah, so this is the whole image. I think I'm gonna swap out the cutouts with this one. Yeah, because then we have some more opportunities. Open with Photoshop. Is that okay? Let's leave it as it is. Another thing, when you take pictures of things for Photoshop, try to avoid having this crazy background. It makes everything a lot harder when you do post-processing. You're a bit lucky because you have light areas with dark backgrounds and darker areas with lighter backgrounds. So it works, but generally don't take pictures like this. Open, copy, and then paste it here. Then we should be able to put this one in the area of the cross. Let's actually put it on top of the cross, and then go to the layer and go down to 70% opacity. Scale it until it is the same size. Seems to be a bit rotated too. Could also be that it's warped a bit, but we can deal with that. No problems. A bit big, I think. Okay, so yeah, good enough. Good enough. Enter. Let's take this up to 100. When you've already done this work and you have cut out this, you can mark it by, as I said, hovering over the icon of the layer, holding Command or Control, pressing once, go to the new layer that you're cutting out, and just press the mask once. Then it does all the work for you. I see that Elisa has put a drop shadow here. I think I'm gonna figure out a shadow in a different way. So I'm gonna just remove this one and put this one here, or here actually. Yes. And then as you see, because I have the mask here, everything is a bit off. So I want to disable the layer mask, and then I want to mark out more of the architecture. I want to have the whole thing in view. We do have to deal with this in a bit of a different way soon, but so now I just marked everything in the mask, so I can go into the mask and paint it white. Main color white, and we can remove things a bit more cleverly. The next thing I would do is to get rid of the ceiling that Elisa has cut out. So again, go into the mask, L. Make sure the mask is selected, delete. You can also see that the darkness, the image has some kind of darkness because of the ceiling. So we want to get rid of that. Just mark an area that you know is the colors you want. And I try to more or less follow the perspective. It's no biggie if it doesn't. Press transform, hold shift, and stretch it. Select the color that's near. So I want to fill it in. There you go. Fill, content aware. Works fine. Looks good enough. Make sure you have the pixel layer selected, not the mask. Select the area you feel is good color-wise. And you see here it becomes darker. So I want to keep a bit below that. You could also, of course, copy this like this. Copy and then paste in place. Paste in place is paste in place, Shift Command V, and then transform it like that. Press enter. If we merge down and we preserve the layer mask, when I merge into a layer with the mask, it will ask if I want to apply the layer mask to the layers, cancel, or preserve the mask. And I want to preserve the mask because I still want to have this. That's a quick way of fixing that problem. The red wall seems to be unnecessary. I'm going to delete it. I can keep the hue saturation layer that Elisa has made, and it makes everything darker. Make sure the mask layer is selected, and then select everything that's facing away from, let's say, the camera, the viewer, like this, and then delete. This is a good example. I just deleted it and got the black mask. You want the opposite, so again, make sure the mask is selected, hold Command or Control and press I for invert. And then you see the mask is inverted black and white. Again, we have a situation where we want we have broken the clipping of the layer 18, which is the tapestry. Tapestry. The same way, I would just copy the selection, have the layer selected, press mask. If you have this situation where your tapestry is cut in the wrong way, you have to unlink the content of the layer with the layer mask, and then if you select the layer's pixels, you can move the content of the insides separate from the rest. And I can also see that this layer seems very flat. I want to change the form of the tapestry. So again, Command T for transform. Actually, distort is better. Then you can push this back. You can keep this a bit bigger maybe. Just keep it just outside the corners. And then you would want to have it about there, I would say. Yeah, press enter. And then you see the shape of the tapestry is also formed by the rest of the structure. We're gonna fix this in a while, don't you worry. I removed the opacity, or the fill was pushed down to 25 when Elisa had made this. Might not be a big issue. I would probably use blending modes for this, and just find one that I feel is blending well with the background. Sometimes overlay works quite well. It becomes a bit too dark. Maybe soft or hard light would go well. Exclusion. I think this one also looks quite good. But I think soft light or hard light would work well. We just have to lower the opacity of the whole layer. For me, that usually looks better. Then you're blending the tapestry to the background. Oakley dokley. Yeah, we also have to fix the blue wall. I think I'm gonna get rid of the blue wall layer because I want to use this blue wall instead. So I'm just gonna show this layer, select the area of the blue wall. Make sure that you keep this corner intact because that's quite important for the perspective. Blue texture, and then mask it. Again, unlink this. Distort, pull this one up. I would probably suggest to make this a bit more sort of narrow in the texture. I don't know if you see it, but the texture is quite wide. And I think because the wall is big, compared to a human being, it looks better to just have a bit more of a narrow plank structure. Makes sense in my head at least. Looks better. Okay. Okay, let's fix the background. I just want to get that a bit more in check. I can just use the spot hidden tool instead. And then get rid of this. It doesn't need to look like this. Oop. And then clone stamp. What I want to do is to establish a bit more clear lighting situation. And I have some hints. The rocks have light on the top and sort of back. The architecture has darker sides on the same side as the rocks and light on the other side. That's good. This seems to be darker than this part. Generally, I would say that the light comes from this area. And I want to strengthen that. And the first thing that stands out is the shade of the ladies. They seem to be flatly lit, so I think I want to fix those, just to get a bit more realism in the shading. So a quick way to fix this would be to make a copy of the lady in the back, and I copy just by holding Option on the keyboard and pulling, and you see the double cursor. Then I want to make this layer more or less all black, and I use hue saturation because I want to keep the saturation. I clip the hue and saturation to the layer of the lady in the back. I pull this one all the way down almost to fully black. I want to increase the saturation because I want to keep some color in the shade, and I want to change the color to a colder version of the colors. And this being a sort of a yellow lady, I'm going for a purpley blue as the shadow color. And here's the trick for doing this quickly. You could probably just apply this layer, so I just Command E to merge the layer with the adjustment layer. And then I clip the shadow layer. I clip it to the lady in the back. And this might not work, but then I can move this shadow, offset the shadow, so to speak, out of position. I'm not too happy with this because I also move the shadows. And that's because I kept the shadows of the lady. Instead, I'm gonna unclip it, put a mask on the shadow lady back. And then I'm gonna trace around this person. And the light, remember, comes from this angle from the back. So I want the light to hit here and to be in shade here. So you have to imagine the shape of this lady. If I use white, you will see it more clearly. This is a ball. It's the head is egg-shaped. This is also a ball. This is a cylinder. This is like a beautiful sack of potatoes, which means that there's a form that's a bit like this. This is the center line. It has shape to it. The arm is a bent cylinder. This arm is also a bent cylinder. And this is a knee that's sort of a ball, but it's also in the shade of the lady. And this is also another limp sack of potatoes. But it has sort of a shape that flows a bit like this. And you have to keep this in mind when you shape this light. So, okay, let's go back. Let's find a brush that's a bit better. I want to use... It's a bit too rough. Nope, I don't want a round brush. I want a square brush. Actually, this one could work quite well. Yeah, let's use this one. It's a bit of a rough brush. It has this kind of texture, and because the lady is a bit, I don't know, different kinds of textures and stuff, I think this would work well. So what I do is I mark this the mask layer, and then I can draw with black on that. And in this way I could shape the light to be in the front of her, and then of course the knee would be in light, the front of the arm would be in light, this arm would be in light, and so on, and it would fall off down like this. It could even be a bit like this. But we know that this lady is not lit from this side, she's lit from the back. So this is a ball, this is a ball. There's a bit of light, no, not over there, it doesn't look good. She might even have some light on her face like this. It's a bit rough, maybe I can have a flow of opacity of 50, and I could give her some light over the face like this. Maybe that's a bit of a bounced light from her shoulder. She might even have some light over there. It's a bit too big. Let's go for 50. And by the way, the reason I use 55 as a size for the pencil is just because I'm lazy. I don't want to press many things. I don't want to move my hand, so I just press 5 twice instead of 50. There might even be some light coming in there. And then maybe even on her hand there's a soft light comes over like this. And it could be possible that the light actually goes under here and hit her here. But that might be a bit of a overstatement, so I might have to remove that. You could also do the opposite. If you paint with white instead, you could go back on the light. Yeah. Could also be some bounce light from the front here, so it's possible to go in and lighten the whole thing if you want to. Let's see, I can turn that shadow on and off. I think, probably. The problem now is that this is too light, so if I remove the, yeah, here. Yeah, as I said, delete it if you don't need it, because it's gonna trick you up. Actually, I might need to have an extra white layer with lady light, and basically just go in with a very light yellow. You can clip that to this one right there, rather, and then you could sort of accentuate the light a bit to make it even more standing out even a bit more from the background. Let's do the same for the other lady. If you get a lot of layers like this, you could select the layers and then make a group of it and call this one lady in back. And then you have the layers a bit more organized. So when you're done with her, it's easier to move around and stuff. Lady in front, group, lady in front. I'd also suggest to have things in front on top of things in the back. That was my bad, probably. Okay, the same here. I would delete this. When you have small adjustments, I don't use layer masks. It's too much work for little. Another thing I want to do is move these flowers a bit. They just seemed a bit out of place. I think this lady can be merged into one. Because it's not that complicated. Again, copy of the lady in front. Hue saturation darker by quite a lot. Clip her just to be able to see her. Increase the saturation and also shift the colors if you want to. And then I can merge the colors down, mask the lady, and then paint in some light. Forehead, nose, cheek, chin, arm, shade from the fabric. Try to avoid giving her a mustache. Maybe even we can see her ear. Get some light. She gets light in the nook over her arm. Her whole arm is more or less in light. And her fingers. Her knee, obviously. And this being fabric is also shaped a bit. So make sure you try to follow the folds in the fabric. This I would say would be all white. This too, and this too, and this too. And then the flowers could get some love. light could even hit these flowers a bit from the distance, just to give it a bit more of a three-dimensional shape. Remember to zoom out now and then. And now we're getting there. We're getting a bit more of a logical structure of the light. Actually, now there's a bit too much light on these ladies, so either we have to fix it on the rest of the image, or we have to just tone down the effect a bit. And we can do this by just lowering the opacity. A couple of percentages, couple of percent. Yeah. I also want them to sort of stand out, so just a little bit goes a long way. That's a lot of fiddling for quite a little effect. Let's fix the ducking duck. Duck, where are you? Maybe we should move the duck down here, because I moved the rock here a bit up. I think the duck looked good there. And we have to do the same with the duck. I don't know. It doesn't look that good. Might actually change this one to lighten. Does that work? Yeah, it's not bad. It's not that obvious that it's a bird anymore, but let's keep it. Okay, these are fiddly things. I think we have to increase the darkness of a couple of things. Basically, I think I want to make a shadow layer. And I want to select everything that I find that is in the shadow in the main structure of the construction. This part will be in shadow. This part will be in shadow. This part. Let's start with that. And I don't want to color this one black. Shadow is of course blacker, but since the light color is quite yellow, a warm, almost red light, I want to be on the opposite side of the color wheel, so I want to have maybe actually a cool blue, which is quite saturated. And then paint that. And this one, we have to find a good blending mode. Let's try overlay. And then 50%, making the back a bit darker. And then I have a shadow layer, which is, as long as I paint with this color, I could go in with soft pencil, and it's quite easy to darken areas that I want to darken. So let's see if we can darken parts of the area that just generally feels like there. So if the light angle is a bit like this, oops. Then of course the shadows would also be here. And you can see that when I paint with a colored shadow, it feels more, I don't know, logical maybe. So let's call the shadow angle, could be something like this. Wouldn't that be right? Yeah. I'm gonna use my mouse to do this because it needs some kind of precision. There we go. Actually, I'm gonna pull it down here just to make this edge a bit more clear. And don't worry about the lady, she's in the front. Okay, and then I can make a really big so I'm painting with a brush that's, the flow is quite low, 30. And I put in a quite hard shadow. I might soften this one a bit. I want to soften this one. We could even use the blur filter on this one. Just select whatever you want. Filter, blur, Gaussian blur. And then I still want the edge to be visible, so that should be okay. The same goes for this. So this is the angle of the sun now, which means that I would get some kind of shade here. But of course for the first part there is nothing for the shade to hit, but over here it starts moving into the water. And this is just me freestyling a bit the distance of the shade. Yeah, maybe this is okay. And then the shade follows the perspective. That's a bit tricky to get your brain around, so just bear with me. And now I'm just testing, I'm just pressing, and I'm keeping away from this area because the light actually hits the waterfall. That's not underneath the floor. Yeah, I think that looks quite good. And I make it a bit softer, maybe not that soft, like that. Yeah, looks okay. The same here. The angle of the sun would be more or less like this, but it also comes from this area, so I would put the shade, whoops, a brush tool, and not that big. The shade would gather in the corners here. You could also say that this lady would be even darker on the back. But it's a bit nice to see the flowers too, so we'll see. This shadow layer, I think that works quite well to sort of set it a bit more into the situation. It's still a bit light here, so I'm gonna duplicate this layer, select all and delete it, and then just, oops, I can call it more, shadow more. And then if we go in here with slightly big brush, I can go in and sort of emphasize areas that I feel should be even darker. That didn't work well. Makes no sense to have more shade behind her. Let's call it now I'm just testing stuff. Don't think that worked well. Okay. I sort of feel like the ladies could be a bit darker, so let me try to put the shadow more in the front of the ladies. Oops, not into the group of the lady. Yes, and then go here and call it let me see how this looks. Good, good, good. Yeah, I think that works. You see the same as this looks a bit too dark now, or actually the water is too light. So what we could do is go in and enhance the light of the structure a bit. Make it like a turn like this, and I guess we want it above light on all, in all. Okay. Screen opacity. Let's go for 70. X. We have two seagulls here. That doesn't look that good. This seagull, I think we can move a bit. And I want to flip it. So we have a counter movement to the open. She's looking at her, she's looking at the seagull, and the seagull is moving this way. And I want to get rid of this one. Just drawing with the heel brush, just to get rid of some of these artifacts and things. Okay. So I've been at it for quite a while. We've been over quite a lot of different things. I also forgot that I have this camera, so I'm not going to be able to use much of that because I look like this angry boy. This is before, after, before, after. Okay, let's save this file. Let's save a copy in JPEG. Let's do the same with the original one. Save a copy. Again, I know it's just a file to me, but name your files properly. It will help you in the long run. Before, after. Okay, I hope that was helpful and fun. Again, it was way too long, so let's hope I will be able to edit it down to something edible. I really enjoy this work. I think it's really fun. As you see, it takes a while. Photoshop work is not something you can do in a hurry. I hope you also realize that part of what I do more slowly, because I show you guys and I explain what I do. I think you will see that when you get more comfortable with Photoshop and these functions, it's faster, and because you do the same thing over and over and over again, it's quite efficient after a while. I can't really say I will be fast with this if I just did it myself. I would think I used maybe half the time, and now I have been at this for, let's see, I've been doing this for 2 hours now. I would say if I had 1 hour, I could do most of this work. And in my mind, I think that's worth it. Of course, there are parts of the project that could be better, and if I was planning to hand this in as a really important competition or these things, I would probably go in and fix some of the artifacts that you can see in the image. But for this kind of use, when you're developing skills and trying to convey ideas and concepts, atmospheres, architecture, spaces, this is, in my eyes, more than enough detail and also more than enough polished. Hope someone else will send me files. This is fun. Thanks for watching.